Hi all, and welcome back to the John Deere B tractor restoration again. It's November 2018, and we're just sort of getting back into hopefully, I'm hoping it's the final run. I want it finished. It's dragged on long enough, this one. So yeah, as you can see, the hood's been removed from where it was on the last video I think we uploaded. Not a lot has gone on with the main part of the tractor. A nice layer of dust all over it, but that shall be soon blown off when we come to put a final coat of top coat on it. Get that exhaust painted black. So yeah, so what we're on with at the moment, or what I have been sort of doing, is repairing the brakes. As you can see, we've got them stripped down into their individual components, and I shot blasted them all, cleaned them all up, and I've given them a coat of paint. Now with these brakes, obviously drum brakes, and with this being a mid-series Model B, we still have the drums riveted to the actual shaft off the side that comes out the gearbox. On the last Model B and on the 50s, the shaft is basically in reverse, and although there's still a cog on the end of the shaft that runs on the bull gear, the nut that holds the cog on is not there anymore. It is actually holding the drum on this end, which makes it much easier to service the drums and do any work on them. Whereas with this system, you've got to take the whole housing and drum out of the side of the main case. That hole there. So as I say, we've cleaned them all up, and we're where we are now with them. Now with the brake shoes, they were a bit, well, tatty to say the least. The linings were cracked and broken and contaminated with oil. So I cleaned these up, the actual shoe itself, and I've got some of those flexible linings that you can get off various places, and we re-riveted them onto the shoes. As you can see, now I have a tool that I made. It's an old pipe flaring tool, and I made some bits to go in it which would do those rivets, but I think it does a fairly good job, really. Yeah, so that's them. These linings, as I say, are these flexible ones, so you can't really break them. Generally you can't. They just bend around and rivet on, and I believe they're obviously asbestos free, which is, I suppose, another bonus. The only thing I do find with them is that they can be a little bit, they get warm. They can get a little bit more brake fade with them, and you certainly can get them warm on these old tractors, because they're not exactly the biggest brake shoe in them. And although the tractor itself probably only weighs just over a ton, 1.25 tons, whatever it is, going downhill at speed can warm those brakes up to the point where you can actually, where you will peel the paint off the drum. That's one thing. There's another little gripe I have with them, and if I put it down there on the bench, when you with them being flexible, they come in a I think I have some here somewhere. Those ones there are actually for an earlier series, for the early series B, so they're even smaller, and so they come flat, as you can see, and then you bend them around the shoe. Now the problem you have is that when you bend them around, rivet them on, they do just get a bit, this end doesn't, it's just a bit flappy. Both these ends, it sticks up a bit, and so it makes it a bit of a hard job when you're trying to set the brakes up. So what I do is I have a bit of industrial strength super glue, and I put it in the crack, and then I just knit them together, leave it overnight, and it just yeah, makes a job of it really. I've done it several times. I think I've replaced linings on a few of these now, and these and A's and that, and it works a treat. Works a treat. I've never had a problem since. So yeah. So the next job with these, I think, I want to make sure that there's plenty of paint goes over the edge and not just up to the edge. So I might just give these a top coat paint inside. As you can see, I've put a bit of paint on where the brake shoe runs. Bit of paint, sorry, a bit of tape. As you can see there. So the brake shoe doesn't run in this area, so I might just give it a bit of top coat, which will help keep the paint on the edge of the drum. And then I'll build them up. I'll do a video of them built up, because you've got to shim them up. There's a bit of end float you've got to get rid of. So yeah, that's the plan with those. So the next thing I'm also fiddling with is, as I say, the hood's been taken off, and we put the patch in the hood. Now, if you recall, this had a hole cut in it. As I think I said in the past, it was quite something that was done so that you could easily remove the exhaust pipe, the muffler, and so Joe Farmer, he would just cut a hole in the bonnet hood and get to the bolts, and I didn't worry about the hole that was left, but obviously we want to do something with the hole. It's a shame really, because this bonnet hood, sorry, I keep calling it one or the other, but there you go, is in really good condition. It's been well prepared. I suspect it's had a nice thin layer of filler put all over it, prepped down and then painted. But why they didn't repair the hole, don't know. It's a bit silly really. And now, from the offset, I'll say now, I'm not a bodywork man. Never have been, never will be. I just can never get the finish I want, and it just drives me to distraction really. But it is what it is, and I much prefer doing the heavy bits as opposed to the bodywork. So my method of doing these, putting these patches in, and these patches can vary. Oh, do they vary? Some are quite good, depending where you get them from, and some are quite poor. They have the poor bad bend in them and everything. I wouldn't care, they're probably all made at the same place, to be fair. My method is to put the hood on the tractor, as you see it there. So you line it all up with everything. So don't do anything with the hole that's cut in it first, initially. Just line it all up on the tractor. Line it up so you're happy that it fits. And then once you're happy that everything has a decent gap, gap being, you know, where the air stack comes through, where the exhaust is going to come through, and where the radiator cap sits. I then drop the patch over the muffler exhaust, and then I mark it up where it fits on the hood, and therefore it gives me a line to work to cut it out. Now, as I say, they're not the best fitting things, these. Some seem to fit better than others. I am up against it with this one because, as we've said in the past, that tractor has some radiator damage where the muffler exhaust fits. If you recall, I think we found that this bracket here, where it fits down to, had been broken off or welded up, broken and welded up. And I suspect strongly what's happened is it's been driven into a low building somewhere, exhaust's got snapped back, it's broken that bracket, probably destroyed the exhaust, but in the meantime it also bent this hood. So it's a little bit ripply just in here and in here. So it wasn't the best of fits, this one. But I've got it in, and what I do is I cut the hole with a bit of modification. Now these come with a flange on one side. I tend to cut the flange off. It's more of a pin than anything else. So I cut the flange off, fit it, and then I just spot weld them in. I don't know if you can see that, but they're spot welded. because if you try and seam weld them, they tend to ripple the bodywork. So I spot weld them in, and then I cheat a little bit. If we turn it over, I can do this without dropping the camera. I turn it over and I put a fiberglass patch inside. That does two things. It helps sort of strengthen it up, and it fills in any gaps and holes that might be around the edge of the patch, which helps just bind it all together. So once I've done that, I then just tip it back over again if we can. It's a crash. I then rub it down, and I will put a thin layer of filler over the whole thing, rub it down, and hopefully there won't be too many bumps and holes and hollows. And then we can paint it. The plan with this hood is just to rub it all down in the end, put an undercoat on, and then paint it with the final coat. It's in too good a condition to get back to bare steel. The only other thing is these horrible mylar stickers. Getting those off is a bit of a pain. I use a heat gun, not too severe heat, but just a heat gun. Warm them up and they peel up, and you can scrape them off. But be very careful, you don't want to be scraping great lumps of paint off as well. And also you're left with a horrible residue, sticky residue, which you've got to take off with thinners. I tend to use the vinyl ones where there's no, with these, if you recall with the mylar stickers, there is there's a backing, you can just see it there. I like the vinyl ones where you get individual letters. Looks a little bit more authentic. Yeah. So my last job tonight is I'm going to put some filler on here and let it go off overnight, and then I'll rub it down and see where we get to. Okay, so that's where we are. As you can see, my BW is in the workshop. But that's another story. Yeah. Okay then. Thanks again for looking. Bye.